Sophia's hands trembled as she stood in the marble foyer of the Moretti mansion, Charlotte Ashford's perfume still burning in her nostrils like acid. The words echoed in her mind, each syllable a knife twisting deeper. "You smell poor." She had endured many humiliations in her 26 years, the eviction notices, the turned-off utilities, the judgment in people's eyes when they saw her worn shoes. But this was different. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about Noah, the 5-year-old boy upstairs who had wrapped his small arms around her neck that morning and whispered, "You smell like cookies, Sophia." The sound of expensive heels clicked against marble, getting closer. Charlotte was returning, probably to deliver another cutting remark. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs. She needed this job. Her grandmother's medical bills were drowning her. She couldn't afford pride. But then another sound cut through the tension, the heavy, measured footsteps of a man who commanded rooms just by entering them. Christopher Moretti had arrived home early. Sophia's breath caught as she turned to see him in the doorway, his 6'3" frame filling the space, his tailored black suit crisp despite the late hour. His dark eyes swept the scene, landing first on Charlotte's smug expression, then on Sophia's face. Something shifted in his gaze, something dangerous. "What?" he said quietly, his voice like steel wrapped in silk. "Did I just walk into?" If you want to discover how this story began and what happened after this explosive moment, subscribe to the channel and leave in the comments where you're watching from. Each view helps bring more stories like this one to life. 3 weeks earlier, Sophia had stood in the same foyer for the first time, her worn canvas bag clutched in sweaty hands as she waited for her interview. The Moretti mansion wasn't just wealthy. It was obscenely, impossibly rich. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. Marble floors so polished she could see her reflection. Art on the walls that belonged in museums. She didn't belong here. She knew it. Everyone who looked at her knew it. The housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, had been kind but direct. "Mr. Moretti needs someone immediately. His son's previous nanny quit without notice. He's a single father, very private, very protective of his boy. The pay is excellent, but the expectations are high." Sophia had nodded, trying not to think about the 3 jobs she was juggling, the sleep she wasn't getting, the grandmother whose medication she couldn't afford. She needed excellent pay. She needed it desperately. "I have experience with children," Sophia had said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I worked at Little Stars Daycare for 2 years, and I've been babysitting since I was 16. I'm patient, reliable, and—" "Can you start today?" Sophia had blinked. "Today?" "Noah's been with his father at work all morning. It's not ideal." Mrs. Chen's expression had softened slightly. "Mr. Moretti is a good father, but his world is complicated. Noah needs consistency, stability, someone who will actually stay." "I'll stay," Sophia had promised, meaning it with everything in her. She needed this job, yes, but something about the way Mrs. Chen described the little boy tugged at her heart. A 5-year-old whose nannies kept leaving, who spent mornings at his father's office because there was no one else. She understood loneliness. She'd lived it her entire life. Meeting Noah had sealed it. He'd been sitting in the mansion's library, a library with floor-to-ceiling books, a rolling ladder, and windows overlooking gardens that seemed to go on forever, when Mrs. Chen brought her in, small for his age, with his father's dark hair and the biggest brown eyes Sophia had ever seen. "Noah, this is Miss Sophia. She's going to be spending time with you." The boy had looked up from his book, a chapter book she'd noted with surprise, advanced for his age, and studied her with an intensity that reminded her of someone much older. "Are you going to leave too?" he'd asked quietly. Sophia's heart had cracked. She'd knelt down to his level, ignoring the expensive rug beneath her knees. "No, sweetheart, I'm not going anywhere." "That's what Miss Caroline said, and Miss Jennifer, and Miss Noah." She'd reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and placed her hand over his smaller one. "I promise you, I'm staying." Something in her voice must have convinced him, because after a long moment, he'd nodded. Then, shyly, he'd held up his book. "Do you want to read with me?" That had been 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of falling completely in love with a little boy who was too smart for his own good, too lonely for any child to be, and who had somehow decided that Sophia was his person. 3 weeks of carefully avoiding Christopher Moretti. The man was never home during her shifts. He left before she arrived at 7 a.m. and returned long after she departed at 6 p.m. She'd seen him exactly twice, Once in passing as he'd rushed out to a black SUV surrounded by men in suits, and once through a window as he'd stood in his home office, phone pressed to his ear, his expression cold and commanding. Both times, her breath had caught. Christopher Moretti was beautiful in the way dangerous things were beautiful. Sharp jawline, dark eyes that seemed to see everything, a presence that made the air feel thicker. He moved like violence wrapped in expensive fabric, and every person in his orbit seemed to bend toward him like he was gravity itself. Sophia had been relieved to avoid him. Men like that didn't notice women like her, and when they did, it was never for good reasons. But today, everything had changed. Charlotte Ashford had arrived at 4 p.m., letting herself in like she owned the place. Sophia had been in the kitchen with Noah, making cookies, his favorite activity. Flour dusted both of them, and Noah's laugh had been the freest sound she'd heard from him yet. "What?" a cold voice had said from the doorway. "Is going on here?" Sophia had turned to find a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Blonde hair in perfect waves, designer dress, diamonds glittering at her throat and wrists. Beautiful in a way that was meant to intimidate. "We're baking," Noah had said, his smile fading as he recognized her. "Miss Sophia is teaching me." Charlotte's gaze had raked over Sophia with unconcealed disdain. "Where's Mrs. Chen?" "It's her day off," Sophia had replied, straightening her spine. "I'm Noah's nanny. Can I help you with something?" "His nanny?" Charlotte had laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Christopher is paying someone to let his son make a mess?" "We're baking cookies," Sophia had said evenly, though her hands had tightened on the counter. "It's an activity that helps with fine motor skills, following directions, and—" "I didn't ask for a lecture from the help." Charlotte had stepped closer, wrinkling her nose. "You smell poor, like bus seats and cheap detergent. Did you actually think you could just exist in this house without proper hygiene?" The words had landed like a slap. Sophia had felt her face burn, shame flooding through her so intensely she thought she might be sick. She'd showered that morning, she always showered. But her soap was drugstore brand, and yes, she took the bus because she couldn't afford a car, and don't talk to Sophia like that. Both women had turned to find Noah standing between them, his small hands balled into fists, his face flushed with anger. "Noah," Sophia had started. "She's mean, you're mean." Noah had pointed at Charlotte. "Sophia smells like cookies, and she's nice, and she doesn't leave like everyone else, and I don't like you." Charlotte's expression had turned ugly. "You little—" "That's enough." Sophia had stepped in front of Noah, shielding him with her body. Her heart had been racing, but her voice had been steel. "I think you should leave. You think you can tell me what to do?" Charlotte had laughed. "Do you have any idea who I am? Christopher and I have an understanding. We're leaving." The new voice had cut through the kitchen like a knife. Christopher Moretti stood in the doorway, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sophia had never seen someone go pale so quickly. Charlotte's face drained of color as Christopher stepped into the kitchen, his dark eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made Sophia's breath catch. "Christopher," Charlotte breathed, her tone immediately shifting to something softer, almost pleading. "I didn't expect you home so early. I was just insulting my son's nanny." His voice was quiet, controlled, but something dangerous lurked beneath the surface. "In my home, in front of my son. I was simply pointing out that standards should be maintained. Get out." The words were so soft that for a moment Sophia wasn't sure she'd heard them correctly. But Charlotte had heard. Her eyes widened. "Christopher, you can't be serious. I was only—" "You insulted a woman who has been nothing but kind to my son." Christopher moved closer, and though he never raised his voice, the air itself seemed to vibrate with his anger. "You came into my home uninvited. You spoke to her like she was beneath you, and you did it in front of Noah. So I'll say it one more time, slowly. Get out." Charlotte's mouth opened and closed. Her gaze darted to Sophia, filled with venom, before returning to Christopher. "You're choosing the help over me, over what we could have together. There is no we. There never was." Christopher's expression didn't change. "You've been useful for certain business appearances. That arrangement is now terminated. Marco will escort you out." As if summoned, a broad-shouldered man in a dark suit appeared in the doorway. Charlotte looked between them, her face twisted with humiliation and rage. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Do you know what my father—" "Your father," Christopher interrupted, "knows exactly who I am and what happens to people who threaten me or mine. If he's smart, he'll teach you the same lesson. Marco." The bodyguard stepped forward. Charlotte shot one last venomous look at Sophia, before spinning on her expensive heels and stalking out. The click of her footsteps faded, followed by the distant sound of a door slamming. Silence filled the kitchen. Sophia stood frozen, her arm still protectively around Noah, her heart hammering so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. She'd just witnessed something that felt bigger than a simple argument. The way Christopher had spoken, the way his bodyguard had appeared instantly, the casual mention of Charlotte's father knowing who he was, it all pointed to something dark and complex. "Noah," Christopher said, his voice completely different now, warm, gentle. "Go wash up, buddy. You've got flour everywhere." "But Sophia's fine. I need to talk to her for a minute. Then you two can finish your cookies, okay?" Noah looked up at Sophia, worry in his big eyes. She managed to smile and nodded. "Go ahead, sweetheart. I'll be right here." After Noah reluctantly left, Sophia found herself alone with Christopher Moretti for the first time. The kitchen suddenly felt much smaller. He was standing less than 6 feet away, tall and imposing, his dark suit probably worth more than 6 months of her rent. She waited for him to fire her. That's what happened to people caught in crossfire between the wealthy and powerful. They became collateral damage. "Are you all right?" The question surprised her so much that she looked up sharply. Christopher was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, concern maybe, mixed with something that looked like anger that wasn't directed at her. "I'm fine," she said automatically. "You're not." He moved closer and Sophia fought the urge to step back. "She humiliated you. In my home. In front of my son. I've dealt with worse." The words came out before she could stop them. Christopher's jaw tightened. "That doesn't make it acceptable." Sophia didn't know what to say to that. In her experience, wealthy people didn't care about the humiliation of their employees. They barely noticed they were human. "I apologize," Christopher continued, "for Charlotte's behavior. She won't be returning, ever. You didn't have to. I mean, if she's important to you." "She's not." His eyes met hers, and Sophia felt pinned by the intensity of his gaze. "Nothing is more important than Noah's well-being, and from what I've observed, you've been better for him in 3 weeks than anyone has been in years." "Observed?" The word slipped out before she could think better of it. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Christopher's face. "Did you think I wouldn't check on my son? The home security system isn't just for exterior threats, Miss Carter." Sophia Carter. She was still processing the fact that he'd been watching them. "You've been watching us?" "Watching the cameras occasionally when I have a moment. Noah is my priority, always. I needed to know he was safe, that he was happy." Christopher's expression softened slightly. "He laughs with you, real laughs. I haven't heard him laugh like that since his mother died." The revelation hit Sophia like a physical blow. She'd known Noah's mother wasn't in the picture, but she'd assumed divorce, abandonment, not death. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. 3 years ago. Cancer." Christopher's voice was matter-of-fact, but Sophia could hear the pain underneath. "Noah was too young to understand. He just knows his mother is gone and everyone else keeps leaving too." "I'm not leaving." Sophia said it firmly, meaning it with everything in her. "I promised him. People make promises all the time. I keep mine." Their eyes met again, and something passed between them, understanding maybe, or recognition. Two people who'd learned that promises were usually lies, but who needed to believe in them anyway. "Your grandmother," Christopher said suddenly. "She's ill." Sophia stiffened. "How do you—" "Background check. Standard procedure." He held up a hand before she could protest. "Lung disease. Stage 3. The medications are expensive, and your insurance barely covers 20%. Humiliation burned through her. "That's private. It's also causing you to work 3 jobs. You're exhausted, Sophia. I've seen it. You're running yourself into the ground. I'm handling it. You shouldn't have to." Christopher pulled something from his jacket. A business card with a name and number. "Dr. Rashid is one of the best pulmonologists in the country. He owes me a favor. Your grandmother will see him this week, and all costs will be covered." Sophia stared at the card like it was a snake. "I can't accept that. It's not negotiable." "Everything is negotiable when it involves charity." "It's not charity." Christopher's voice was firm. "It's an investment. You're good for Noah. I need you focused, not distracted by worry. This ensures you can give him your full attention." The logic was cold, practical, and probably exactly how he approached everything in his life. But Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that there was something else beneath it. something that looked almost like kindness. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. Christopher was silent for a long moment. Then, "Because Noah chose you, and my son has excellent judgment." Before Sophia could respond, Noah's voice called from upstairs. "Sophia, can we finish the cookies now?" A genuine smile crossed Christopher's face, the first she'd seen from him. It transformed him, made him look younger, almost vulnerable. "Go," he said. "I'll be in my office if you need anything." Sophia nodded, still clutching the business card. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Sophia." She looked back. "Thank you," he said simply, "for being kind to my son, for staying when others left, for existing in this house with more grace and dignity than people who've had every advantage. You belong here more than Charlotte Ashford ever could." The words lodged somewhere in Sophia's chest, warm and painful and impossible to process. She managed a nod and fled to find Noah, her hands shaking. She didn't see Christopher watch her go, his expression complicated and conflicted. He'd meant every word he said, but he'd also just crossed a line he'd sworn never to cross again. He'd noticed his son's nanny as more than just an employee, and in his world, that kind of noticing only led to danger. 2 weeks after the Charlotte incident, Sophia's grandmother had her first appointment with Dr. Rashid. The change was immediate and miraculous. New medications, a treatment plan that actually addressed her condition rather than just managing symptoms, follow-up appointments already scheduled with specialists. "I don't understand how you afforded this," her grandmother had wheezed, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Baby girl, what did you do?" "My employer values me," Sophia had said, and it wasn't a lie. "He wants me focused on my job." But late at night, lying in her small apartment, Sophia couldn't stop thinking about Christopher Moretti, about the way he'd looked at her in that kitchen, about how he'd defended her without hesitation, about the quiet way he'd arranged everything for her grandmother without expecting gratitude or recognition. He wasn't what she'd expected, and that terrified her. Because she'd also started noticing things, the way he came home earlier now, arriving before her shift ended, how he'd appear in doorways while she and Noah were playing, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed, watching them with an expression that made her skin tingle, the way his gaze would linger on her face when she laughed at something Noah said. She told herself she was imagining it. Men like Christopher Moretti didn't look at women like her. Not really. Not in ways that mattered. But then came the Friday that changed everything. Sophia had stayed late. Noah had been struggling with a nightmare the previous night, and she'd wanted to make sure he was settled before the weekend. Christopher had called to say he'd be home by 7, which was unusual enough that Mrs. Chen had raised her eyebrows. "He's coming home early a lot lately," the housekeeper had said, her tone carefully neutral. "I wonder why that is." Sophia had pretended not to understand the implication. When Christopher arrived, he found her and Noah in the living room, sprawled on the plush carpet with art supplies everywhere. Noah was drawing a family portrait, him, Sophia, and his father, surrounded by flowers that looked more like colorful explosions. "Sophia said we should draw happy things," Noah explained when his father entered. "Things that make us feel safe." Christopher's gaze had moved from the drawing to Sophia, who was sitting cross-legged in her simple jeans and t-shirt, paint smudged on her cheek, her natural hair pulled back in a simple bun. She looked nothing like the polished, perfect women he usually surrounded himself with. She looked real, warm, like home. "It's beautiful, Noah," Christopher had said, his voice rougher than usual. "Can I keep it?" Noah had beamed. "Really? You want it for your office?" "For my office," Christopher had confirmed. Then to Sophia, "Can you stay a few extra minutes? I'd like to discuss something." Her heart had jumped, but she'd nodded. After Noah was settled with a movie, Christopher had led her to his study, a room she'd never entered before. Dark wood, leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. It smelled like expensive cologne and old paper. "Am I in trouble?" Sophia had asked, only half joking. "No." Christopher had moved to his desk, then seemed to think better of it and leaned against the front edge instead, making the space less formal. "I wanted to talk about Noah's schedule. He has a school event next week, a father-son breakfast. I'll be attending, but..." He'd paused, and Sophia had seen something vulnerable cross his face. "I don't know what I'm doing," he'd admitted quietly. "With the parent things, the normal things. I can run an empire, but a school breakfast terrifies me." The confession had been so unexpected, so honest. that Sophia had found herself moving closer without thinking. "You're a good father," she'd said firmly. "Noah adores you. He talks about you constantly, how smart you are, how strong, how you always keep your promises." "He said that?" "Every day." Sophia had smiled. "You're his hero, Mr. Moretti. You don't need to be perfect at pancake breakfasts. You just need to show up. That's all any kid wants." Christopher had stared at her for a long moment. "Call me Christopher, please. Mr. Moretti makes me feel like my father." "Okay." The name felt intimate in her mouth. Christopher. The air between them had shifted, thickened. Christopher's dark eyes had traced her face like he was memorizing it, and Sophia had felt her breath catch. "You have paint," he'd said softly, "on your cheek." Before she could move, he'd reached out, his thumb brushing the spot just below her cheekbone. The touch had been feather-light, barely there, but Sophia had felt it everywhere, a current of electricity that made her gasp. Christopher had frozen, his hand still raised, his eyes locked on hers. She'd seen the war happening behind them, desire fighting discipline, want battling wisdom. "I should go," Sophia had whispered, but she hadn't moved. "Yes," Christopher had agreed, but his hand had shifted, cupping her jaw now, his thumb stroking her cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. "You should." Neither of them had moved. "This is a terrible idea," he'd said, and his voice had been raw, honest. "You work for me. You're 20 years younger." 6 years, Sophia had corrected without thinking. "I'm 26. Still too young, and you deserve better than what my life offers. You deserve safety and normalcy and—" "Stop telling me what I deserve." The words had come out firmer than she'd intended. "Stop deciding for me." Christopher's eyes had darkened. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." And suddenly Sophia had found courage she didn't know she possessed. "I see you, Christopher. Not the Mafia boss everyone else sees. You, the man who watches his son sleep because you're terrified something will happen to him, who remembers how Noah likes his sandwiches cut, who arranged medical care for a stranger's grandmother because you couldn't stand knowing someone was suffering. I see you." "Sophia, and you see me," she'd continued, her voice shaking but strong. "Actually see me. Not the poor girl, not the help, not someone beneath you. You see me." "I do," he'd breathed, and then his other hand had come up to frame her face, his forehead lowering to rest against hers. "God help me, I do. I see you and I can't stop seeing you and it's driving me insane." "Then stop fighting it," Sophia had whispered. The kiss, when it came, had been inevitable as gravity. Christopher's lips had met hers with a gentleness that belied his dangerous reputation, questioning, asking permission even as he claimed her mouth. Sophia had melted into him, her hands fisting in his expensive shirt, her whole body coming alive in ways she'd never experienced. He'd kissed her like she was precious, like she was worth everything. When they'd finally broken apart, both breathing hard, Christopher had pressed his forehead to hers again. "This complicates everything," he'd murmured. "I know. My world is dangerous. People who care about me, people I care about, they become targets. I know. I should let you go, right now, send you away where you'll be safe." Sophia had pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "But you won't." "No," Christopher had admitted, his voice rough with emotion, "because I'm selfish, and I want you too much. Is that wrong?" "Only if you don't ask what I want." "What do you want, Sophia?" She'd answered by kissing him again. The sound of small footsteps in the hallway had broken them apart. Noah, looking for Sophia to say goodnight. They'd separated quickly, and Sophia had gone to tuck him in, her lips still tingling, her heart racing. Christopher had been gone when she'd come back downstairs, but there had been a note on the hall table in strong, dark handwriting. "We need to talk. Tomorrow. Dinner. Let me take you somewhere we can figure out what this is." See, underneath was an address. Sophia had clutched the note to her chest, equal parts terrified and exhilarated. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in her life, she was choosing something just for herself. And that choice was Christopher Moretti. The restaurant Christopher chose wasn't what Sophia expected, not the obvious upscale Italian place with private rooms and suited bodyguards. Instead, it was a small French bistro in a quiet neighborhood, intimate and warm, with soft lighting and tables far enough apart for privacy. He was already there when she arrived, wearing dark jeans and a simple black shirt instead of his usual suit. He looked younger, more approachable, though no less devastating. When he saw her, his entire face transformed with a smile that made her stomach flip. "You came," he said, standing to pull out her chair. "Did you think I wouldn't? I was terrified you'd reconsider, that you'd realize I'm too old, too damaged, too—" "Christopher." Sophia placed her hand over his on the table. "Breathe." He did, his thumb automatically stroking over her knuckles. The waiter appeared, and Christopher ordered for them both in flawless French, not in a way that was showing off, but because he genuinely knew what was good. Sophia found herself relaxing despite her nerves. "Tell me about you," Christopher said once they were alone. "The real you, not the parts you put on your resume." So she did. Sophia told him about growing up with her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident when she was 8, about teaching herself to braid hair by watching YouTube videos, about her college scholarship that had fallen through when her grandmother got sick, about the dreams she'd had to postpone but never quite abandoned. Christopher listened like every word mattered, like she mattered. "What did you want to study?" he asked. "Child psychology. I wanted to help kids who'd been through trauma. Kids like—" She trailed off. "Kids like Noah," Christopher finished quietly. "Kids like me." It was the opening she'd been both hoping for and dreading. "Tell me," she said softly, "about your world, about what I'm really getting into." Christopher's expression shuttered slightly. "You don't want to know." "Yes, I do. I'm not naive, Christopher. I've seen the bodyguards, the way people react to you, the things Charlotte said about her father knowing who you are." She squeezed his hand. "I'm choosing to be here, but I need to know what I'm choosing." He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working. Then, "My family has been in this life for 4 generations. My father built an empire, not all of it legal. When he died, I inherited everything. The businesses, the territory, the responsibilities." His eyes met hers. "The violence. Have you killed people?" The blunt question seemed to surprise him. "Yes," he said honestly. "In self-defense. In defense of my family. In defense of what's mine. I've done things I'm not proud of, Sophia. Things that would horrify you if you knew the details. But you don't enjoy it." "No." His voice was fierce. "I hate it. Every single time I hate it. But my world doesn't allow for pacifism. If I show weakness, if I hesitate, I die. Noah dies. Everyone I care about becomes a target. Including me," Sophia said quietly. "If people know you care about me." "Yes." Christopher's grip on her hand tightened almost painfully. "That's why this is insane. Why I should walk away right now. You're not safe with me, Sophia. You'll never be fully safe." "I've never been safe," she countered. "I've been one missed paycheck from homelessness my entire adult life. I've walked through dangerous neighborhoods at night to get to my 3rd job. I've been invisible to people who have the power to help me. At least with you I'm seen. At least with you I matter. You matter more than you know." The food arrived, interrupting the intensity of the moment. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, but Sophia could feel the weight of things unsaid hovering between them. "There's something else," Christopher finally said, pushing his plate away. "Something you need to know before this goes any further." Dread pooled in Sophia's stomach. "What?" "Noah's mother, Isabella. She didn't just die from cancer." Christopher's face was anguished. "She was targeted by a rival family. They poisoned her slowly over months, made it look like illness. By the time I figured it out, it was too late." Horror washed over Sophia. "Oh my God." "I killed every single person involved," Christopher said flatly, "systematically, brutally, and I'd do it again. But it doesn't change the fact that she died because she was with me. Because I let someone get close enough to hurt me where it mattered most. Is that why Noah's nannies kept leaving? Were they in danger? No, I hired them from reputable agencies, kept them at arm's length emotionally. They left because—" Christopher's laugh was bitter. "Because they were terrified of me. Because they saw what I really was and couldn't reconcile it with being around a child. But you think I'm different. I know you are. You've already seen the worst of me. The cold way I dismissed Charlotte, the bodyguards, the control. And you're still here." He reached across the table, cupping her face with heartbreaking tenderness. "But Sophia, if something happened to you because of me, I wouldn't survive it. I barely survived losing Isabella. If I lost you—" "You won't," Sophia said fiercely. "I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that. Watch me." Christopher pulled her closer across the table, their faces inches apart. "You're so damn stubborn. You're so damn negative. I'm realistic. You're scared. Sophia's voice gentled. It's okay to be scared, Christopher. I'm terrified too, but I'd rather be terrified with you than safe and alone without you. The kiss was different this time, deeper, more desperate, flavored with fear and hope and need. When they broke apart, Christopher pressed his forehead to hers. Come home with me, he whispered. Not to my bedroom, not yet. Just come home. Stay. Let me hold you and pretend for one night that this could actually work. Sophia should have said no, should have been sensible. But when had her heart ever listened to sense? Okay, she breathed, take me home. They left the restaurant hand in hand, and Sophia noticed the black SUV that had been following them at a discreet distance. Christopher's protection, already extending to her. The drive to the mansion was quiet, charged with anticipation. Mrs. Chen had already left for the evening and Noah was asleep. The house felt different at night, more intimate, less imposing. Christopher led her to the living room, where a fire was already burning in the massive stone fireplace. He pulled her down onto the plush sofa, arranging her against his chest, his arms wrapped around her like he could shield her from the world through sheer will. Tell me something, Christopher murmured into her hair. Something true. I was jealous of Charlotte, Sophia admitted. When she walked in looking like she owned the place, looking like she belonged with you. I hated how beautiful she was. You're more beautiful than she could ever be. I'm not. You are. Christopher turned her to face him. You're beautiful in ways that actually matter. Your strength, your kindness, the way you love Noah without reservation, the way you fight for what you believe in. Charlotte is decorative, you're essential. Sophia's eyes burned with tears. No one's ever said anything like that to me before. Then everyone before me was a fool. Christopher kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her nose, before finally claiming her mouth. The kiss deepened, turned heated, his hands tangling in her hair while hers explored the hard planes of his chest. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Christopher rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling for you, he confessed roughly. Fast and hard, and completely out of control. It's terrifying. Good, Sophia whispered back, because I've already fallen. They stayed like that for hours, talking and kissing and simply existing together. Sophia learned that Christopher played piano, beautifully, hauntingly, that he spoke 5 languages, that he'd wanted to be an architect before his father died, and destiny chose his path for him. Christopher learned that Sophia sang in the shower, that she was terrified of thunderstorms, that she'd never been on an airplane or seen the ocean. I'll take you, he promised. Anywhere you want to go. Everything you've missed, everything you've dreamed of, I'll give it to you. I just want you, Sophia said honestly. And Noah. And maybe a chance at something normal. Normal's overrated, Christopher murmured, but his arms tightened around her. But I'll try. For you, I'll try. It was close to midnight when headlights flashed through the window. Christopher tensed immediately, going from relaxed to alert in a heartbeat. He gently moved Sophia aside and stood, his entire demeanor changing. Stay here, he ordered, his voice cold and commanding, the voice of the boss, not the man who'd just been holding her. What's wrong? Someone's here. Unannounced. His phone was already out, texting rapidly. Marco should have called if anyone was coming to the house. Fear spiked through Sophia. Is it? The front door burst open. 2 men Sophia didn't recognize stormed in, guns drawn. Behind them, a 3rd man entered, older, distinguished, with cold eyes that reminded her disturbingly of Christopher's. Hello, son, the man said pleasantly. We need to talk about your new pet. Christopher moved to block Sophia from view, his body a shield between her and the guns. Get out of my house, he said, his voice deadly calm. Now. I don't think so. The older man smiled, and it was a terrible thing to see. Not until we discuss why you're risking everything we've built for a woman who's worth nothing. Sophia's blood ran cold. This was Christopher's world. This was the danger he'd warned her about, and she'd just walked right into it. Father. Christopher's voice could have cut glass. You have 10 seconds to explain why you're in my home, threatening someone I care about, before this becomes a problem you won't walk away from. The older Moretti, because of course this was Christopher's father, alive and very much still involved, laughed. It was a sound without warmth, a predator's amusement at cornered prey. Threatening? I'm protecting our family, Christopher, something you've apparently forgotten how to do. His cold gaze shifted to Sophia, who stood frozen behind Christopher. The black babysitter has you so twisted up you can't see straight. Do you have any idea what the other families are saying? That you've gone soft, weak, that you're compromised. I don't give a damn what they're saying. You should. The elder Moretti moved closer, his bodyguards flanking him. The Calabrese family is already making moves on our territory. They see you distracted, playing house with the help, and they smell blood. Your blood. Noah's blood. Sophia saw Christopher's jaw clench, but his voice remained controlled. My personal life is none of your concern. You stepped down 5 years ago, remember, and gave control to my son, who I thought had more sense than his father. The old man's expression turned disgusted. But here you are, making the same mistake I did, getting attached. Your mother was my weakness, Christopher. Isabella was yours. How many more women do you plan to bury before you learn? The words hit Christopher like physical blows. Sophia saw him flinch, saw the pain flash across his face. She wanted to go to him, to touch him, to comfort him, but she was afraid that any movement would escalate the situation. Leave Sophia out of this, Christopher said, his voice rough. I can't, because you won't. The elder Moretti pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and held it up. Security footage played. Christopher and Sophia at the restaurant, holding hands, kissing in the car, entering the house together. You're not being subtle, son, which means everyone knows, and everyone who wants to hurt you now knows exactly how to do it. Ice flooded Sophia's veins. She'd been so caught up in the romance, in the feeling of being seen and wanted, that she hadn't fully processed what Christopher had been trying to tell her. This wasn't just about class differences or workplace complications. This was life and death. So what's your solution? Christopher asked coldly. Kill her? Make her disappear? Threaten her until she runs? Send her away, his father said simply. Tonight. Give her money, set her up somewhere nice, make sure she and her grandmother are comfortable, but end this before it gets both of you killed. No. The word was absolute, final. Christopher's father blinked, surprised. No? I said no. Christopher turned slightly, his hand reaching back to find Sophia's, pulling her forward to stand beside him rather than behind him. The gesture was deliberate, powerful, a statement. Sophia stays, in my home, in my life, in Noah's life. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. Christopher, his father started. I buried my wife, Christopher cut him off, his voice breaking slightly. I held my son while he cried for his mother. I've killed men with my bare hands to protect what's mine. I've done everything this family has ever asked of me and more, but I won't give her up. I won't. Sophia's heart was breaking and soaring at the same time. She squeezed his hand, trying to pour every ounce of support into the touch. The elder Moretti studied them for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, his expression softened, just slightly. You love her, he said, and it wasn't quite a question. Yes, Christopher said simply. I love her. It was the first time he'd said it. Sophia's breath caught tears springing to her eyes. Then God help you both, his father sighed, because love makes you weak, son. It gives your enemies leverage. It made you strong enough to walk away from this life, Christopher interrupted. You stepped down because you loved Mom more than power. You chose her. Don't pretend you did it for any other reason. His father's face tightened. For a moment, Sophia thought he might explode with rage, but instead he did something unexpected. He laughed, a real laugh. You're right, he admitted. I did, and it was the best decision I ever made. He looked at Sophia properly for the first time, really seeing her. You girl, do you understand what being with my son means? The danger, the sacrifice, the constant fear? Sophia found her voice, though it shook. Yes, sir. Do you love him? Yes. No hesitation. Yes, I do. And the boy, Noah? He's amazing, Sophia said, her voice strengthening. Smart and kind and so full of love despite everything he's lost. I'd die protecting him. You might have to, the old man said bluntly. People will use him to get to Christopher. They'll use you, they'll threaten, hurt, or kill anyone Christopher cares about if they think it'll give them an advantage. I know. And you're still choosing this. Sophia looked at Christopher, this beautiful, damaged man who'd seen her when no one else did, who'd protected her, who'd fought his own father for her. Then she thought of Noah upstairs, sleeping peacefully, trusting that the adults in his life would keep him safe. I'm choosing them, she said firmly. Both of them. Whatever that means. Whatever it costs. The elder Moretti stared at her for a long moment. Then he holstered his gun. Sophia hadn't even noticed him drawing it, and gestured for his men to do the same. Then you'll need training, he said practically. Self-defense, weapons, security protocols. Christopher can't protect you every second. You need to be able to protect yourself and the boy. Sophia blinked, surprised. You're accepting this? Hell no, I think you're both insane, the old man said bluntly. But I also remember being young and in love and thinking I could take on the world. Sometimes that stupidity is exactly what saves you. He turned to Christopher. But we do this smart. She doesn't leave the house without protection. Security upgrades, background checks on everyone in her life. Her grandmother moves into the guest house here where we can monitor her. Agreed, Christopher said immediately. And you, the elder Moretti pointed at Sophia, learn to shoot, learn to fight, learn to spot a tail and how to lose one. If you're going to be a liability, you're going to be a prepared liability. It should have been insulting. Instead, Sophia felt strangely touched that he was thinking about her survival at all. When do we start? She asked. A slight smile crossed the old man's face. I like her, he said to Christopher. She's got spine. Maybe you didn't completely lose your mind after all. I told you, Christopher said, pulling Sophia against his side. She's extraordinary. We'll see. The elder Moretti headed for the door, his men following. He paused at the threshold. Christopher, the Calabrese situation is escalating. They made a move on the waterfront shipment last night. 3 of our men are in the hospital. Christopher's entire body went rigid. Casualties? None. But it's coming to a head. They're going to force your hand soon. Let them, Christopher said coldly. They'll regret it. After his father left, the mansion fell silent except for the crackling fire. Christopher pulled Sophia into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry you had to see that, hear that. Stop, Sophia interrupted. Stop apologizing for your world. Stop trying to protect me from reality. I'm here. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. Christopher pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. I love you, he said again, like he couldn't stop saying it now that he'd started. I love you so much it terrifies me. I love how you make Noah laugh. I love how you stand up to me when I'm being an ass. I love your strength and your kindness, and the way you see good in people even when they don't deserve it. I love you too, Sophia said, tears streaming down her face. I love how you protect the people you care about. How you're trying so hard to be a good father, despite never having a good example. How you're honest about your fears, instead of hiding behind arrogance. How you made me feel like I mattered for the first time in my life. They kissed, desperate and deep, a promise and a claim all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Christopher rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he said suddenly. Sophia froze. What? Marry me. Not because you have to, not because I'm trying to control you, but because I want the world to know you're mine and I'm yours, because I want to wake up every day with you beside me, because I want to give you and Noah everything, safety, security, love. He cupped her face with trembling hands. Because the thought of a future without you in it is unbearable. Christopher, we've only known each other for 5 weeks. I don't care. I knew with Isabella after 2 weeks. When you know, you know. And I know. His thumb stroked her cheek. But if you need time, I'll wait. A week, a month, a year. I'll wait as long as you need. Just don't say no. Please don't say no. Sophia thought about her tiny apartment with its peeling paint and broken heater. Thought about the 3 jobs she could barely juggle, the constant fear of one wrong step leading to disaster. Thought about her grandmother struggling to breathe, about always being one emergency away from ruin. But more than that, she thought about Noah's laughter, about Christopher's arms around her, making her feel safe for the first time in her life, about the way he looked at her like she was precious, valuable, worth protecting. She thought about love, real, imperfect, terrifying love. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Christopher's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. He kissed her again, pouring every ounce of love and promise and forever into it. When they finally broke apart, he was laughing, a sound of pure joy that Sophia had never heard from him before. Thank you, he breathed. Thank you for choosing me, for choosing us, for being brave enough to love me despite everything. Thank you for seeing me, Sophia said simply. They held each other in front of the fire as the night deepened around them, making plans and promises, building a future out of hope and determination. Upstairs, Noah slept peacefully, unaware that his family had just become complete. Outside, bodyguards patrolled the grounds, keeping watch for threats that would inevitably come. And in the city, enemies plotted and schemed, preparing to test Christopher Moretti's resolve in ways he couldn't yet imagine. But in that moment, none of it mattered. In that moment, there was only love. And love, Sophia was learning, was worth fighting for. 18 months later, Sophia stood in the mansion's garden, watching Noah chase butterflies through the flowers. He was bigger now, more confident, his laughter ringing out freely in a way that still made her heart swell. So much had changed. The wedding had been small, intimate, just family and close friends, with enough security to invade a small country. Noah had been the ring-bearer, and his proud smile as he walked down the aisle had made Sophia cry harder than the vows themselves. Her grandmother lived in the guest house now, healthy and comfortable, spending her days in the garden she'd always dreamed of having. Dr. Rashid's treatment had given her years she'd thought were lost. The Calabrese situation had ended badly for the Calabreses. Christopher had been ruthless, efficient, and unforgiving. Sophia had learned not to ask about the details of that side of his life. She knew he did what was necessary to protect them. That was enough. She'd learned to shoot, to fight, to spot danger in a crowd. She'd learned the security protocols and the emergency procedures. She'd learned to live with bodyguards as a constant presence and to check for tracking devices in her car. But she'd also learned to live with joy. Christopher showed her the ocean, the Pacific, viewed from a private beach in Malibu, where Noah built sandcastles and she tasted salt water for the first time. He took her to Paris, to Rome, to every place she'd ever dreamed of visiting. He gave her the world, but more importantly, he gave her himself, his fears, his hopes, his unwavering love. "Sophia," Noah called, running toward her with a butterfly perched on his finger. "Look, it landed on me." "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she said, kneeling to admire it at his level. "Like you," Christopher said, appearing behind them. He was in casual clothes, jeans and a t-shirt, looking younger and more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. He scooped Noah up with one arm and pulled Sophia close with the other. "My beautiful family." Noah giggled, the butterfly flying away. "Daddy, are we going to the park later?" "If your mum says yes." Sophia smiled at the title, Mom. Noah had started calling her that 6 months ago, shyly asking if it was okay. She'd cried and held him and told him it was more than okay. "Yes," she said. "We can go to the park." As Noah ran off to play again, Christopher pulled Sophia into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was both familiar and eternally new. "Happy?" he murmured against her mouth. "Deliriously," Sophia admitted, "although I never imagined happiness would come with bodyguards and security sweeps. Regrets? Never." She looked up at him, this dangerous, beautiful man who'd changed her entire world. Not a single one. "Good," Christopher said, his hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach, "because in 7 months Noah's going to be a big brother. So you're stuck with us forever now." Sophia's eyes widened, her hand covering his. They'd been trying, hoping, but she hadn't wanted to say anything until she was sure. "You knew?" she breathed. "I notice everything about you," Christopher said softly. "Every change, every detail. And this morning, when you couldn't drink your coffee," he grinned. "I hoped." Tears streamed down Sophia's face as she kissed him, pouring every ounce of love and gratitude and wonder into it. This was her life now. Messy, complicated, sometimes dangerous, but utterly, completely hers. A family built on choice and love and fierce determination. A home that had nothing to do with marble floors and everything to do with the people who lived between its walls. She'd started as a babysitter who smelled poor, according to a woman who knew nothing about real value. She'd become a wife, a mother, a partner to a man who ruled an empire but knelt at her feet. And as she watched Noah play in the garden while Christopher held her close, Sophia knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was exactly where she belonged. This story has reached its end. If it touched your heart in any way, leave your like and share it with someone who also enjoys emotional and intense stories. New stories are coming soon. Until next time.